Okay, so here we want to focus on the word blackmailing because that does have the criminal connotations, making it as if the council are criminals. What has happened? Control. Okay, in here, the word that stands out to me is this suddenly. So this is the notion that the council has pretty much brought this out of nowhere, which will create that sense of injustice. Like, they don't have time to save up to pay these exorbitant fees. Interesting how he's got the inverted commas here. Greenhouse levy. So here there's almost that implication that the government is using a euphemism, which is suggesting that they don't want to come straight out and say it's a tax. So they're calling it a greenhouse levy. And again, the sense of exclamation mark here, that shows you his indignant tone. So you're meant to share that sense of outrage at the prices. Mm. Again, this notion of ignoring residents' rights ties back into that injustice that we've been talking about. Um, and that notion of being indignant, I have rights, you should be doing something about my rights, not ignoring it. Now, there's a lot of anti green, anti environmental sentiment throughout this piece. And we can see here so called peaceful vegetarians who love to hug trees. Now, this is quite pejorative language that they're using here. The tone he's using here is quite nasty. Um, so, by portraying them as these peaceful vegetarians who love to hug trees, he's kind of making fun of them. So, it's a bit of satire. Now, it's this contrast here as well. Some of us in this town have businesses to run. Of course, you've got this inclusive us here, but it's this notion that while we're working, these hippies are going around and hugging trees. So we're creating a real sense of us and them. And again, appeal to these rights again and this notion of mad hippies. So they all form an attack trying to portray, sometimes he's trying to portray the council as being criminals, sometimes he's trying to portray them as being these like really crazy tree hugging hippies. Hmm. Interesting, focusing on words such as forced. Now, I think that was up here earlier. Oh, we've got anyone? Yeah, we've got have to. Uh, have to dictated. Again, there's that sense of forcing, but they haven't actually used the word forced yet, I don't think. But this notion of this capitalized everyone, it's like this totalitarian regime here. It's not flexible at all. They're being dictated to, their rights are being ignored. So we've really got this sense that the government is like a totalitarian regime. And that there we're talking about connotations. Now, if we're talking about his contention, remember that the contention comes in two parts, the point of view plus the call to action. So here is obviously the call to action is not to have a levy and to spend the money on other things. We've got here better school buildings, resources for the library, new road surface, shopping centre. We've got quite a cross section of suggestions. So this is likely to appeal to a whole range of the community. One with school kids, people who drive, people who shop. I mean, who doesn't that cover? Okay, so here you've got a whole lot of sort of statistics, and again, his tone is a little bit snide here. Greenville alone is not going to save polar bears from drowning or stop the natural cycles of drought. So he's suggesting here that this small contribution is not going to make a difference. And by doing that, he contrasts small percentages with these kind of dramatic, large, world-altering effects. So he suggests to the reader, it's unrealistic that it's going to be able to make these changes. And again, we've got this, appeal to history and tradition, changing these buildings that have been this particular way for more than 200 years. And, audiences are generally uninclined to uh, embrace change. And what makes this question rhetorical here is the word ugly. So if the question was just how could anyone put solar panels on the roofs of these historic tourist attractions? Well, there's many ways. But ugly solar panels, that's the word that loads this question. And again, we've got our attacks and his hippie friends. And also, this makes them sound very much like children, friends who haven't done their homework. And by contrasting this immediately to expert, the credibility is taken away from Mayor Lane. This too you could address as a call to action, a focus on nuclear power instead. Yeah, I'd say probably that if I was going to do my contention, I would talk about the opinion of not having the greenhouse levy and the call to action as being government funding for nuclear power plants. Now let's have a look at this image. Okay, few things to notice here. Obviously, the gold chain and the strange hat indicates that this is the mayor. Now, the fact that he's portrayed as a giant, again, we get that notion of this scary sort of totalitarian regime. So here's this giant and these are small, sort of helpless people. Now, it's interesting that the sun is behind him and casting a shadow over the community. Again, that notion of a dark, ominous effect. And of course, if the whole community is in darkness, how effective is their solar panels going to be? Now, again, we have this appeal to families down the bottom here, holding the small child's hand, and the fact that the money is being shoved into the pockets is making it appear that the mayor is greedy and pocketing the money himself, especially since the money is flowing out onto the ground. And this notion of cutting off their electricity supplies, giving them no choice as well. Now, just remember when you talk about those things, how people are going to react. So, when they see how illogical it is for the solar panel, seeing how dark everything is, they're obviously going to be less inclined to support them because they're not going to see them as being effective. So, always when you look at the observations that I've mentioned throughout this piece, make sure you always bring in the reader's reaction. And of course, this presentation won't have been very interesting because it's 11:44 p.m. at night, but it's easier for me to talk than to email lots of responses. So, yes, I will send and make some more of these tomorrow.